Ringsiders. I'm Jamie, joined by Callum. How are you doing, Callum?
Great, thank you, Jamie.
We have a very special guest today. He is Freelance Wrestling's Isaias Velazquez. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, and thank you for pronouncing my last name the right way. You'd be amazed.
I was actually dreading that. I was like, go on, Jamie, say it right. And he did.
Oh, he did. I was waiting. Like, as soon as he said I was like, Velazquez or Kez? Let's see here. And he said Kez, and I was like, yes, awesome.
Which one do you usually get the most? What's the worst pronunciation of your name you've had?
They call me Isaiah. They don't even say Isaias. And it's funny because I don't mind it. Like my entire life, I know it's a difficult name. And I always tell people like, oh, my mom cursed me with a difficult name. So I don't mind when people call me Isaiah. When people call me Isaac, I'm like, okay, that's a little way off. That's ways off. Like, but it's funny because my friends, like, they all like correct whenever somebody calls me Isaiah. Like, I'll hear my friend say it's Isaias, and I'm like, oh. But I get Isaiah, and then I get Velazquez, and it's Velazquez, exactly how.
I can kind of see that. Yeah, I can kind of see that one. I think when I first saw your name, that's what I thought it was in my head. And then when I actually said it out loud, I was like, no, it's probably this. So you've got one of those names. Like, a lot of people can't pronounce my name, Callum McInnes. I usually call them Machines. And I've had that all my life. Whereas Jamie, he's got a nice, normal name, Jamie Bell. No one's going to mess that one up.
Yeah.
No, true, but, they can add words onto the end of it and, but that's another story. But no, I made my day that because I thought my stupid British accent, I'm going to get this wrong. So I say now, I'm not going to talk for the rest of this now. I'm going to leave you and Callum so I don't screw up. I'm done.
Before we start it, you were just a beard again.
How's that?
It sometimes happens where when I'm editing, all you can see is his beard from here and below. That's all you can see. Yeah. And it's just this beard talking for half the interview. So, Jamie, that's fine, mate. That's great.
I can see it perfectly now, too,
yeah. Well, what we've been asking everyone when we've been speaking to him is, with everything that's happened recently, with the pandemic going on, wrestling has taken some downtime and it's just starting to pick back up again in America. So you've got shows going on again, like you've had Game Changer Wrestling, who have been absolutely smashing it. Like we've just got an affiliation with Fight TV, so we're actually covering the GCW shows for Fight TV, and it's been the most fun I've had in a long time watching indie wrestling. Used to be a big fan of independent wrestling like 10, 15 years ago, and I've kind of rekindled my love of it now thanks to GCW. And there's something special about it coming out of the pandemic, seeing the crowds again. Like even if they're only small crowds and socially distanced, it still shows you how much you missed a crowd. For yourself, you wrestled GCW recently, and what was it like for you being back in front of a crowd?
It was definitely something that I definitely missed for sure. Just being able to feed off of like their reactions and just their energy. I know a lot of us, we feed off of that when we're in the ring. And it, sometimes there's a couple of things that, I'm doing in a match and I'm kind of just nervous about doing it, but getting that energy from the crowd, it just puts me in that switch to kind of just like, all right, just go and just do it. Yeah. But it was definitely cool. And I know some people that have been wrestling in front of no crowds and they say that it's very difficult just to be able to like get genuine reactions and do things. So being able to wrestle in front of a crowd was awesome. Even if, like how you said, like even if it's like social distancing and like small crowds and stuff like that. That was my first match back, so it was a little nerve wracking. And then exactly what you were saying is, Game Changer has been like just killing it, just coming back. I feel like all eyes are on them right now. Mm-hmm. So when I went out there, not only was I nervous to like put on a good performance and to give the crowd what they want, and then just to kind of get the first one back under my belt. But it's one of those where like I'm going out there and I know that there's probably double or even triple the amount of people watching this show right now. And it puts a lot of stress, but I personally I do well under pressure. I just feel like it adds more. That's just how I am. So but it was definitely, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I'm guessing with you doing training as well, you didn't have too much ring rust coming back. because it certainly didn't look like you had any ring rust when you were in the ring.
Oh, well, thank you. Like, I'm my own worst critic. I watched it back and I just literally saw like everything. And I was like, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. I just things that I do. Like, I'm like, I need to fix this. I need to fix that. I hate that. I hate the way I moved. I hate the way my face looked. Well, it's just, I'm very critical with myself. And I know I'm not the only one. There's a ton of other wrestlers that are the same way. But yeah, like, I was lucky enough being one of the trainers at the Freelance Wrestling Academy to be able to get back in the ring probably like a month and a half or almost 2 months prior to everything started coming around again. Here in Chicago, we went from like phase 2 to like phase 3, and then like once phase 4 hit, that's when we like all of us got back in the ring and we started doing our thing. And my first time back in the ring, I almost like I felt like I was gonna pass out.
I bet. I've heard before. Like when you take your first bump again, if it's been a few months or years since you've taken a bump, it's like taking your first bump all over again, and it like knocks the wind out of you. Or when you first ropes again, you realize like because you build up a resistance to it, don't you? Like
you have like
yeah, and then after a while,
hitting the ropes was a wake up call. The bump was not as bad as I thought, honestly. So during quarantine, I actually used to be a personal trainer, and I'm still certified as well too. And I used to have a certification in prehab and rehab for sports injuries. So I literally took that time off on quarantine to rehab my body and just fix all these small nagging injuries that I had, and my body has never felt better. And then, so taking that first bump, I was waiting for it, just like how you said. I was going to take that first bump, and I was like, everything's going to come back. And I took the first one, and I got up, and I was like, oh my God, this is what it feels like to be normal. Like, let me just enjoy it right now before, like, I start wrestling more and more and more, and then down the line, I'm just messed up again.
So it was a bit of a wake-up call then, like, you know, when you got back into your match, was it not too bad taking the bumps again? Given that you had a bit of adrenaline from the crowd, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. The adrenaline, like you get all these injuries and like stuff hurts, and then you don't feel it until the car ride home, probably, or when you're finally laying in bed and you're just laying there and just like looking at this thing, like, oh, this hurts. Or I wake up and I just see like random bruises all over my body, and it's one of those things where it's like almost like a game where like, let me guess where this one came from.
I watched some matches where I think like that it shows I'm getting old, because when I was younger, I used to watch hardcore matches and stuff and think, oh, that was awesome. But now I'm getting older, I just think, wow, they're going to hurt tomorrow. Like, you know, that's really going to hurt. Or, you know, you're going to have some bruises. I don't get how some wrestlers still walk after some matches. So I just don't, as a fan, I don't get it. But mad respect for doing it in the first place. But like, what's next then? Now you've got that first match back under your belt. What's next for yourself? Like, have you got what's coming up?
I do, yeah. So, you know, I did Warrior against Trey Lamar.
Yeah.
That was a ton of fun. Trey has been one of those guys that I've been like watching. I had always been on shows with him, and I had been able to catch like small glimpses and pieces of like his matches, and you know, I had a ton of respect for him. Like, he's crazy athletic and he's so smooth and crisp in the ring. And then I always like to watch a couple of people's matches before I wrestle them, and I was able to see the match between, again, at Game Changer, Trey Lamar versus Lee Moriarty, and it was amazing. And I remember telling him to, I was like, that match was so cool. So, you know, after being in the ring with him, I told him, I was like, he's so crisp and so smooth in the ring, and like the fact that he's only, I think he said 3 years in. I'm like, oh man, I was like, you're like scary good. Like you're gonna get better. Like,
yeah. Am I right in thinking he was trained by Johnny Gargano?
Yeah, and as soon as like I remember I had some idea. I was like, I know he's from Ohio, like, or that Ohio area, and I was like, who is he trained by? Like, I'm pretty sure. And then he was like, I'm trained by Gargano, and I respect Gargano a ton, and like I watch matches for you know, for like influence and stuff. And then as soon as he's like, oh, I was trained by Gargano, I was like, yeah, that makes sense now. But yeah, I had Warrior, and then I am going to have Black Label Pro, which is out in Crown Point, Indiana, not too far from Chicago, and it's on Eric Stevens' pro wrestling show. and that's at 11:30 Central Time here in the States. And I'll be wrestling in a rematch against Alex Shelley.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
That'll be cool. I absolutely love Alex Shelley. I think he's
same.
one of the most underrated, and I hate saying underrated because I always found it like to be a bit patronizing, but I think he's appreciated by the fans, but he could have been used so much better in his roles too. Like I always thought Alex Shelley was the next Chris Jericho to me. Like I always thought he had that charisma, that look, the in-ring talent. He had that ego and cockiness about him, which he could have been a world champion to me. And I'm always gutted that he never got that world title run in TNA. But yeah, at him and Chris Sabin as the machine gun, so happy they're back. That's one of the best returns of the last 5 years, if you ask me. So yeah, that's absolutely awesome. You're getting to wrestle Alex Shelley. But saying about names that you've been wanting to wrestle and stuff, there was one name on Warrior who we've actually spoken to fairly recently, and that's Crash Jackson. He made his debut for Warrior Wrestling. Crash Jackson.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Crash?
Not so much. I had heard his name, and I got to meet him. Super nice guy.
Yeah.
And I've seen like small clips, but I've never really gotten to like dive deep into like all his stuff.
I think he's somebody who is going to make a huge break in maybe the end of this year, next year. He's just starting to like really get some eyes on him. And I think he's somebody who you just like seeing your in-ring style for maybe only going off maybe about 4 matches that I've seen yours. I think you'd actually gel really well with him as an opponent or even as a tag team partner. So if you get a chance to look at Crash or work with him in the future, that's something I'd definitely love to see. I'm sure Jamie would too, because we're both big fans of Crash Jackson.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you like book his future, you know.
Hey. Yeah, I'm a fan.
You would compliment each other very well. You would really compliment each other very well. Yeah, I'm excited as well when you're saying Black Label because I've only just recently discovered Black Label. It's a company I want to get a lot more into. So I mean, how did that come about? Did they reach out to you to book you?
So I had been working Black Label for about a year now.
Yeah.
And just I've been really blessed, I could say, with the way that they've been treating me there at Black Label. And they always just give me guys that, you know, I could learn from, or there's just guys that are like notable in wrestling. I mean, my first match, I was able to wrestle against like in a scramble with like guys like Danhausen, he's amazing. And then I was able to wrestle Ren Narita on his first match for his excursion from New Japan. It's
awesome.
It was cool, yeah. And then I got to wrestle Benjamin Carter, who's blowing up as well too. I got to wrestle him like out of nowhere. And that was like a last minute addition to the card because we were both available and they wanted to put that match on. And then I was able to wrestle Alex Shelley back before all this quarantine and COVID-19 stuff happened. And I was able to wrestle him one-on-one. And that was always a dream match of mine. Yeah. And I remember I had brought it up to one of the guys that helps run Black Label Pro. And I remember he just messaged me one day. He said, "Hey, are you available for this date?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "Okay, you're going to be wrestling against Alex Shelley." Like, blew my mind. I was like, "Oh, crap. Awesome." So we had that match and, you know, I remember the promoter had said, "We want to do it again. So like down the line, we'll do it sometime." And then when they announced their match back or their show back, they're like, "Hey, we're going to do that match and when we come back, like at our first show." And I was like, "Okay, cool." Just kind of just diving head first into everything because like a little intimidating to wrestle him, but I feel a little bit more confident with myself after getting the first one out of the way.
Is there anything you learned from getting to wrestle somebody like Alex Shelley? Anything that you picked up?
A ton. It's just the way that he puts his matches together is a big thing. Just like his psychology and his reasoning behind certain moves and why he does certain things. That was like the biggest takeaway that I took from that. And then, you know, above all else, dude, he's one of the most humble guys ever. And like in his position, like how you guys were talking about, he's been to Japan, he's been all over the world. And I told him after the match, I was like, hey, if there's anything that I need to work on to get better, please let me know. And then he told me a couple of things, and then afterwards he's like, hey, do you have anything for me? And then, like, in my mind, like, I was like blown away. I was like, I didn't tell him, but in my mind I was like, dude, you know you're Alex Shelley, right? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, you're asking me for advice? Like, I don't know.
How surreal is that? Like, as a
Very,
fan, like Alex Shelley's asking you for advice, and that would blow my mind.
Yeah, exactly. I was like baffled. I was just like, no. Like, I
all
wanted to
good.
be like, you're Alex Shelley, man. Come on.
So going back as well to obviously freelance. Is there any talk of freelance? Putting on any more shows anytime soon? Or?
From what I heard, I don't think anything is going to happen this year.
Right.
I mean, things might change, but from the rumblings that I was hearing about is like, I think freelance is pretty much going to take the rest of the year off. And if anything happens, it's going to start next year.
Right.
When everything is quote unquote safe or semi back to normal.
I think that's what a lot of promotions are doing right now, especially in the UK. I don't think we're going to see wrestling here until maybe March time, 2021.
Yeah.
I can't see anything happening before then. We've got a lot of promotions like saying we will be running shows and there will be next year, but nothing for this year. And that's why it's cool to see people like places like GCW handling it so well. Their shows, like a lot of people are saying, oh, should we really be having fans back? And it's like, well, when you watch the shows, everyone's wearing a mask. The ring is cleaned between every single match. Everyone's socially distanced. The wrestlers are, they're all responsible. Everyone knows what they're doing. So yeah, that works. But I don't know if it would work here. Like, I don't think you could trust the fans, for example, to. That's just speaking as a British wrestling fan. I don't know if we could be trusted, but it's great. It's great to see the American indie wrestling, starting to come back a bit. And I think, like I said, GCW is doing great. But if we can only get Warrior and GCW until everything else is back up and running, that's fine with me. Like, Warrior and GCW, just by watching Warrior the other day, brilliant show, absolutely brilliant. And GCW are killing it on I think they're putting on shows every 2 weeks at the moment, it seems like. Yeah, we're covering them like every 2 weeks or so because I thought their shows were monthly. And then Fight TV were like, oh, we've got 4 shows this month or something. And I was like, what? And it was like, everything's a weekend. They have like weekends of shows, don't they? So they have shows on a Saturday and a show on the Sunday sometimes. And wow, so that's a lot of shows. But yeah, they've been doing such good work. And is GCW somewhere you want to start making a name for yourself as well, like climbing up the ladder in GCW?
I would love to. Not like any opportunity they'd be willing to give me. Like I would. I'm the type of I like to just run with things. So if they give me something, I'll go with it for sure. But yeah, definitely, because like I was saying earlier, is GCW right now, they pretty much are probably the focal point of indie wrestling here in the States for sure. And across it's reaching out to across the world too. I know I've done a couple of shows for them before because I wrestle for another company called Freelance Underground over here in Chicago, and they're like the sister company of Freelance Wrestling, and they had done like Freelance Underground versus GCW, and I wrestled against Joey Janela, and ever since that show, I know I was one of the guys that Brett took a liking to, as well as a few others, and so when they would come to Chicago, he would always message me and say, hey, can you do this show? And I did a couple of them. I did a couple of matches for them. I know one of them was against KTB, and then I did a few other scramble matches. And then this one literally came out of nowhere. I joke about it. I think I put it on my Twitter, but I joke about it, but it was dead. Like, it was legit dead serious. I was eating donuts when I got the message. Like, hey, do you want to wrestle this Sunday? And I was like, oh crap! Like, I should probably put this donut down and stop eating it. And I went back, like, yeah, like, I would love to. Like, absolutely. What are you thinking? And he was like, you're going to be in the scramble against Shane Mercer, Alex Zane, Jordan Oliver, Jimmy Lloyd. And I was like, all right, awesome. Like, let's do it.
No pressure. Yeah. You might
I don't know whatsoever.
put the donuts down. Yeah.
Yeah.
KTB though, how good is KTB?
Amazing.
I'd never seen him work before GCW. I remember watching and I was like, I always get excited when there's a name I haven't heard before and get to see them work. And when he started flipping all over the place and doing Japanese arm drags and stuff, I was like, Jesus Christ, this guy's incredible. So, I mean, what was it like being in the ring with KTB? Because he's a big dude who can fly.
He's a big dude who can fly, and he's very athletic. He's also very strong. And just I mean, me being one of the smaller guys, like on a wrestling show, he's like, that's not to take away how strong he is. Like, because I've seen him just throw people around. Like him and Shane Mercer are freakishly strong. Especially Shane Mercer, he just like the crazy things that he does, just like being able to at the show, he just literally lifted me up with one arm, and I was like, he's like, hey, you think? He's like, I'm gonna lift you up with one arm. I'm like, yeah, man, whatever you want to do. But KTB he's really cool. Also, too, like in and out of the ring, he's like super humble and just awesome. He's an awesome dude.
There's some guys in the GCW at the moment, isn't they? Like you said, I'm sure you agree, Jamie. I think you mentioned Calvin Tankman, for example.
Yeah.
He's something special. Reminds me very much of like a young Samoa Joe.
Yep.
We were talking about that,
in the way like he presents himself, he is quite quiet, but he can kick your ass. And you've got, like I said, KTB, Shane Mercer, and everybody. These are all fairly big dudes, but really agile. And Chris Dickinson is another guy I think is incredible. He is just like a powerhouse wrestler, but he's so fluid and crisp in the ring. And these are all names that I hadn't really heard of until GCW.
Yeah.
And it reminds me very much of like PWG back in the early days, where you'd watch PWG and you'd hear all these new names. And these were all the guys on the indie scene at the time. Like PWG was the hot ticket. And I feel like the hot ticket now in American indie wrestling is GCW. And is that how you feel as well?
Absolutely. Like how I was telling you, like all eyes are on them right now. Like they're the main focal point, like how I said, in the United States for sure, without a doubt. They're putting on shows and they're doing it in a safe way. Like we've had, like they take precautions for the wrestlers as well too. So, but definitely they are. It pretty much is kind of like that ticket, because I know once I did that I did that show, the GCW show. Afterwards, the amount of attention I got on Twitter was mind-boggling to me. It was a lot more than. I mean, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was because it was my first match back either. It was just. It gives you a lot of attention, like just being on the show and having all these eyes on you. People take notice, and exactly what you said. It's like that PWG where it's like you're on it, and then if you impress people, you're gonna get attention.
I absolutely
as well, because I've had people, some of our friends who are primarily WWE guys or AEW guys, and I've had them texting me like, did you watch GCW? Have you seen GCW yet? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm watching it. I actually took a couple of hours annual leave off work, the last pay-per-view, to rush over and watch the pay-per-view. So they are doing something special. They are changing the game, I guess. They are making a name for themselves, which is great. But, another guy I'm a big fan of, I would love to maybe see you with him, is Tony Deppen, is it?
Yeah, Tony Deppen.
Yeah, that's another guy who we were talking about as well. Like, he's just an endless amount. Every match I'm watching, I'm like, that guy's amazing. This guy's amazing. It's just, they're just giving these guys that sort of template to show what they can really do. And it's probably my favourite company around at the moment. I honestly cannot get enough of watching video. I know Callum's the same, aren't you?
It's definitely the company that's rekindled my love for American indie wrestling, because I was never really into like the British scene, so to speak. Like the last 5 or 10 years, the British scene's kind of had like a resurgence, and I was always like an American indie fan. I watched the IWA Mid-South, Chikara, PWG, Ring of Honor, everything. That's like what I grew up on, and I kind of like fell out of it for a bit because I university and work and everything in between. But GCW is kind of like got me back into loving that kind of wrestling. It's almost like it's an underground atmosphere, and but also like insanely popular at the same time. Like PWG was, like you said, if you wrestled on PWG and you did well, that was a star-making performance for you. You there was no ceiling to where you could go. You'd maybe go from PWG to WE or Ring of Honor or something. And I feel like now with GCW, you know someone's popular because if they have a good match on GCW, there's 1,000 gifs of them, like after their match. Like I think we even did a few of your match last time. I like because you have to try and like predict when they're going to do a move, so you start recording it and put your gif up. And like if you've got a good gif, it gets like hundreds of likes and stuff, and people just want gifs now of wrestling. Like, and I think.
I remember going into that match, and on the drive there, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm in this scramble match with all these guys that do such cool things, and then there's me, so I'm trying to think of like, okay, how can I match it, or at least like keep up with them to contribute something awesome to the match. And I remember it was just literally as an idea. I had seen somebody do a double like pin, a crucifix pin, and then when I got there, even Alex Zane told me, he said, "Hey, just take your idea and then just times it by 10 and just make it crazy." And I was like, "What about a crucifix bomb?" He's like, "Let's do it." And then, like how you said, I literally got the most likes ever on any GIF that I've ever had just with the crucifix bomb. I did on Alex Zane and Jordan Oliver. It was crazy.
That's perfect.
So yeah, something I like as well. I mean, obviously with GCW, I guess you're given that creativity. You're allowed to go out there and just have your creative freedom. Because we've spoken to people before, obviously, I've been in WWE, and there's no creative freedom whatsoever. So that must be important to you then, to have that creative freedom.
Oh, absolutely. Like it just it makes your wheel like I know for me it makes my wheels turn. I'm always just trying. It keeps you on your toes because you're able to express yourself the way that you want to express yourself.
Yeah.
So I definitely enjoy that freedom. I can't. Oh man, I wouldn't be able. I don't know how I would react with somebody like kind of just telling me like, "Hey, you can't do this or you can't do that." I don't. I mean, I would. I know me personally. I would make it work. I would try my best to make it work within what they want because I like to think that like I'm a team player. Like whatever you need from me. Like I always tell people all the time. They're like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" I'm like, what? I always tell promoters like, whatever you need from me, just tell me and I'll do it. Like I don't mind. But again, like how you said, like even though they'll be like, okay, well this is what we want, whatever. There's still that freedom that they give you. Like you could like get from point A to point B, but you can fill in the gaps and do whatever you like.
Yeah.
It's an art form, isn't it? I mean, you're expressing yourself. You know, you want to express yourself how you want to be portrayed, not how someone's telling you to do.
We were actually speaking to Jimmy Jacobs last week, and he was saying even as a writer, he doesn't like to restrict the talent and what they can do and how they want to express the story or the match. He'll give them the starting point and like a rough ending, and whatever changes in between changes based on the fan reaction, how comfortable the wrestler feels with telling that story. They might come up with a better idea during the story. And he said, like, just giving them that freedom to express themselves how they want and get from point A to point B and work out on the way. He said that leads to so much better stories than just saying, you have to do this, you have to do that, and like making them do it one way or another. I know you said like you can't imagine doing that, but do you reckon there might ever be a time where that is the case? Like where you do end up somewhere where that might happen?
Not really.
Yeah.
I know if I was ever in that position, I mean, like how I said, like I would do what my, like whatever they're asking me to do and just try to make it work as best as I possibly can. And exactly what you're saying about how like Jimmy was telling you, like he likes to give them like, okay, this is where you start, this is where you end. And then like you've kind of fill in the gaps. When you allow, me personally, when you allow the wrestler to fill in the gaps, at that point it comes off more organically as opposed to I'm reading a script and this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
And it just makes it look more natural because somebody had told me like fans can see through like if it's stage, if it's fake or whatever. And then when you could kind of just make things, be organic, it kind of suspends their disbelief at that point. And you could just be like, wait, is that what was supposed to, it just makes them think. You're like, okay, cool. And it draws you in more because it's just natural. It's not forced.
Yeah. You can always tell when a wrestler isn't quite confident in saying what they're saying. And when that happens, it kind of takes you out of the moment because you're like, well, if you don't believe it, then I don't. And, like you said, you have got to be able to suspend the disbelief. We all know it's a work, but just in the same way you can watch a movie and you're not sat there going, oh, well, Vin Diesel didn't really drive that off a cliff. You can suspend disbelief. But if Vin Diesel was driving that tank and you saw he looked like he was shitting himself, you'd probably be like, hey, all right, mate. So, it's all about being believable. And I think with being comfortable comes being believable or being genuine. And what I was trying to allude to was like, do you ever think you'll end up in a place like that? I only say because I think you'd be a great fit for somewhere like NXT or AEW.
Wow.
I mean, and I'm actually surprised, like with the influx of people who have been on AEW Dark recently, like they've been using some incredible indie names. Like even if it was just like a match on Dark, I think that's somewhere you'd kill it. And I think you'd be even great in like on NXT. That's just like one of those companies is definitely somewhere I could see you wrestling. I don't know about yourself. Obviously, it's your career. I'm not telling you where to go.
Did you want an agent as well, by the way?
I'm gonna call him and be like, Colin told me that I have to be here. No.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Dare I say, I wouldn't mind seeing you challenge for the TNT Championship. I mean,
hey, if I get if I get the offer,
well, where to tag you in that if you like, it's I think that'd be a fantastic match because I love what Cody's doing as well with the weekly challenges. I would love to see that because obviously Callum created a graphic the other night and it's got a bit of buzz. We're trying to get Barry Horowitz to come back. So
we're all like, people think it's a joke, but we're all actually really big Barry Horowitz fans because he was like an incredible worker. Like people don't realize how good he was and good at his job, no pun intended. And he knew what he was doing. He was solid in the ring, really nice guy. And I'd love to see Barry Horowitz come back. We all would for a match against Cody for the TNT Championship. And I made this graphic for Barry. And he posted it online and it got over like 600, 700 likes.
Amazing.
And everyone was saying, bring back Barry, bring back Barry. And we're trying to get Cody's attention. So I'll make...
Well, I think we create another graphic. No.
That's what I was going to say. I'll make a graphic for yourself as well. And then try and get something going there as well.
Oh, man. Well, I appreciate all the help that, you are willing to give me. That's awesome.
We'll do it.
Yeah, I've come to a point where, and this isn't. I'm not bitter by any means, or I'm not trying to fish for compliments or trying to get sympathy by any means at all whatsoever. But I've come to a point where right now I'm literally having fun doing what I'm doing, and I found myself before when I was kind of just revolving everything around one goal. I becoming obsessed with it, and it was anything that I did was not good enough until I got to here, and I felt like I was going down a path where I was going to start to become bitter and become resentful towards other people and comparing myself to other people. And I personally like to be a positive person, and I don't want to ever fall into that. So to me, the moment that I started just having fun and just going with whatever is given me, and almost to the point where like I have nothing to lose. Once I started getting that mentality, that's when I got flown to Mexico. That's when I got flown to Canada. That's when I got flown to California. That's when I did a tournament down in Florida. and like I started going across the country. Even before like all the quarantine things happened, I had a lot of travel planned for me to start wrestling in different parts of the country. But because what happened, like it's okay. Like everything happens for a reason. But I realized that when I started having that mindset, like opportunities started to present themselves more for me. So I'm kind of in that mentality where like I'm just happy with what I'm doing, and I will continue doing this because I feel like this is actually working for me. And if say like, hey, like for some odd reason, the graphic that you make for to go against Cody happens, and I happen to be standing in the ring with him, works, cool, awesome. Like I'm just gonna start taking things as it comes along, and I have the mentality too is like what's meant for you won't pass you.
That's the best mentality to have. If
Yeah.
you're just saying whatever happens, you're just going to enjoy it either way, you're not going to be disappointed. And you can only be surprised about how well things turn out, you know? And we've spoken to a few people before, and they do get to that point where it's like, well, you love professional wrestling and it is your job, but if you can enjoy your job, it will never seem like work. And I think the minute you start resenting people or resenting the job, it will seem like work and you won't enjoy it. So I think that's a really good mentality to have for any professional wrestler or anyone in the wrestling business.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good.
And dare I ask, obviously, when you're saying about traveling across the country, when restrictions are lifted and we're back to somewhat normal, would you be interested in coming out to the UK?
No hesitation, absolutely yes.
Yeah.
I would love to. I know I said like I don't like. There are like small things that I would like to do that would be really cool for me to do. That I would, and one of the main ones is to travel and wrestle like in the UK and in Germany and stuff.
Yeah.
So I would absolutely love to. Yeah, if somebody asked me like, "Hey, do you want to wrestle in the UK?" I'd be like, "Yep."
No hesitation.
Let's do it.
And there's a lot of promotions in the UK as well. But me and Callum always joke. Every city seems to have a promotion now in this country. So you'd have no end of offers, believe me. And we go to as many shows as we can, so we'd be front row cheering you on.
We used to have about 2 promotions in the UK: the FWA, which was in Portsmouth, and All Star Wrestling, which is like our camp show kind of family-friendly shows, and that was it. And then we had like a few smaller indies pop up, and over the last 5 years, I mean, there is a wrestling promotion in every town now, and maybe more, maybe 2 to 3 promotions in every town. It's a real hotbed for wrestling now, and I don't know how it happened or why it happened, but I think a lot of it's to do with how good the talent is that was coming through the training schools. Like we've got some really good schools here. We've got a very distinct style, and I think a lot of the guys ended up going to WE, which brought a lot more eyes on our scene too. Then you had like Progress pop up, and it just kind of took off from there. And saying that, is there any companies here who like a Progress or like a Rev Pro who you'd want to wrestle for?
Honestly, you just like literally hit both of them. It would have been like Progress, Rev Pro. I know in Germany, one of my best friends, he's married and he lives with his wife in Germany. He would always talk about, like, I don't know if you guys were familiar with, there used to be a company called GSW, the German Stampede Wrestling. He used to there a lot, and then he used to wrestle at WXW. And WXW was always one of those where, like, if I went over, like, it would be cool to wrestle for WXW. But definitely, like, Rev Pro and Progress was, like, exactly what you said. As soon as I saw Progress and just, like, the stuff that they were putting out, I was like, oh, it's, like, that's somewhere where I would, if I went over there, I would try to get on one of those shows.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before, it was the closest the UK has ever had to having a PWG. It was that kind of atmosphere. Where for us, it was our hot ticket. Like, we went to Super Strong Style 2 years ago, and the tickets for that sold out in 2,000 tickets sold out in 10 minutes. And for a UK show, that's just never been done before.
Crazy.
Yeah, that was for a 3-day weekend as well. So it was the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So all those tickets gone. And At that point, I was like, yeah, okay, the UK scene really is becoming something, and it's the closest we've ever had to a PWG, and I'm hoping we can keep that momentum going. Obviously, because we've got some really good names here. Is there anyone that you'd like to mix it up with in the UK?
In the UK, I always like blank with these questions. There's always I'm always I'm like, oh, that guy, and then when I get asked these questions, I always blank. I'm just like, oh crap.
What about a Zack Sabre Jr.? I know he's Japan.
Oh yes,
but it's got to be Zack, right?
I'm very influenced and I'm very attracted to like the technical style of things and like going hold for hold with somebody. So, Zack Sabre Jr. for sure would be somebody that I would love to wrestle with. And like, I mean, I know he's signed and everything, but another guy was like Pete Dunne. Like I would have like loved to have wrestled against him. I feel like freelance wrestling was actually going to make that happen too. I was supposed to wrestle Pete Dunne while he was holding the UK title.
Right.
He was going all over the place and defending it like random indies. And he was supposed to stop here in Chicago and defend it against me.
Dude,
and I remember when they proposed that match, it blew my mind. I was like, are you sure about this? Like, do you have any better than anyone else that you think they would have a better match with? And they're like, no, we want to do it with you. I'm like, okay. And then like as it came closer to it, some things happened, of course, and then like it wasn't able to happen. But just the thought of it, just like ever since then too, I was like, I would like to wrestle him.
You know what you've got to do now, then, don't you? Obviously, you've got to fight Volta instead. The only option.
I'm sorry.
You've got to fight Volta instead. It's the only option. You know, he's the champ now.
He would beat the crap out of his pops. Like, oh my god.
I actually saw him at a Progress show just before he signed for WWE, and I was on the balcony, and I've never heard a chop so loud in my life. I actually grabbed my chest. It was that loud. So I can only imagine. Yeah, I mean, I would rather you than be in the ring with him. I've never had anything like it in my life.
Yeah, like that clip that they had of Walter chopping Adam Cole.
Oh.
When I saw it, I was like, "Good Lord, no, thank you."
No, I mean, I would take that for a lot of money, but it would have to be within the millions for me to take that. I'm talking a lot of money because I'm only a small man. It would probably kill me, but but yeah, his chops are just something else. Like I've never had anything like it before. It's one of those moves where when he hits it, it echoes around the arena, and I mean it. I
actually turned to my friend and I said, that was either a shotgun going off or his chops are very, very loud. It was insane. It really was. Yeah, I don't envy anybody taking that. But yeah, I'd love to see you in Progress. I think you'd be a perfect fit for Super Strong Style. I think you'd be a perfect fit.
Super Strong Style would be perfect. Yeah, that kind of tournament style that they do for Super Strong Style. They bring in the imports like to do the tournament, which is always fun. And I think it's like made some people like they get some people from America who might not be too big in the UK, and they'll leave that tournament being like the talk of it. You know, they've been the big name to come out of it. I think Super Strong Style would be incredible. They're not doing it this year, probably starting it again next year. So that would be cool if you could get down there. Obviously, I'm just fantasy booking your career now. I end up doing this. I watch some matches of the person we're interviewing, get a really good idea of the style, and then just fantasy book where I'd like to see them. But Progress would be really cool. And if you can get to anywhere else in the UK, I'd look at Tidal. Tidal are doing some incredible work. Have you heard of Cara Noir?
I have not.
If you like Danhausen, you'll love Cara Noir. Yeah.
Dude, I love Danhausen.
Very, very different characters, but portrayed quite similar, if that makes any sense. Have a look at Cara Noir. I'll send you a message so you can. He does like a whole Phantom of the Opera kind of gimmick.
Oh, okay.
and it's unlike anything you'll ever have seen. And he's the current Progress champion. Won it just before we went into lockdown, and yeah, he's somebody I could see you doing good with as well. I
believe he's a trained ballet dancer as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's always cool. One of the things about pro wrestling, it's you meet so many people from different walks of life, and just everybody always has something just interesting about them. Where it's like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, that's cool. Like, if somebody if you were to come up to me and somebody like, oh, I do ballet, like, what? Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so much different stuff. Like, it's really cool to always hear people like just like their backgrounds and just how different everyone is in wrestling.
But it is great. Well, I'll get Callum to send you a link or something. His entrance is actually, he does like a portrayal of Swan Lake, I think.
Swan Lake.
And he comes out with all like the feathers and everything. It's an amazing thing to see.
Yeah. And my full attention already.
Yeah, honestly, he's worth the price of admission for any show just for his entrance. And there's only one other wrestler I've ever thought that about, and that was The Undertaker. But he's basically the reason I went to Super Strong Style a couple of years ago, just to see his entrance. And when he came out, I had goosebumps watching him. And I love that about wrestling. When you're watching a moment, it's very rarely the moves which stick in your head. It's always the moments which wrestlers do. And it's the moments which gives you goosebumps, or you're still talking about in 10 years' time. Don't get me wrong, there's moves which blow you away, but it's the moments. And do you feel like you've had one of those moments yet where you think, wow, that was cool? Like, did you get goosebumps?
Yeah, I do. Are you talking about like me personally, like in my own matches?
Yeah, you personally in your career.
It was two, and funny, it involves me losing both of them, both of the matches. But it was the first one was against Mustafa Ali when he beat me for the freelance title, and we had built up this run where I was always outsmarting everyone. So for him to finally beat me, the eruption, everyone literally jumps out of their seats and ran to the ring and started pounding on the ring. And like the camera shot, you see everyone just up, like just standing up, and the reaction that he got was crazy. And I'm in the ring like looking like I'm upset, but deep down inside I'm like smiling from ear to ear. I'm like, this is so cool that we were able to build this up to get them to react this way.
Yeah.
And the second time was, again, I lost the freelance championship and I lost it to Kylie Ray, and she beat me with a flash, like she reversed one of my moves and then she pinned me, and it was out of nowhere. And the same thing, as soon as they hit 3 and I look up, like that's when we started having the barricade and stuff like that. But everyone jumped up and literally did this exact same thing, and everybody was like going crazy. So for me, like even thinking about it right now, like I'm getting goosebumps, like how you guys said. Like awesome. I'm thinking because I'm reliving it, and it was such a cool like moment and feeling to like be able to contribute and to be a part of it.
That's it.
And and just as much like it's part of their moment too, like Hailey Ray and Mustafa Ali, like they created that for themselves, and I was just happy to be a part of it. But just to be able to get that reaction was it's awesome. It's really cool.
I've heard a similar story before from a friend of ours, Nathan Cruz, who's a British wrestler. He is like the main heel in Hull. He's also been Progress champion before, but here in NJPW, his real life best friend, Matt Myers, who he's been friends with since he was 5, they always grew up backyarding together, and then they finally got to main event in our Hull City Hall in front of 1,000 people. So they were both, it was an amazing moment for them both. And Matt Myers beat him for the NJPW championship. Nathan was laid on the floor, but he said when he was looking around and seeing everybody cheering for Myers and going crazy, he said he had goosebumps and he had to try and stop himself smiling in the ring, even though he'd just been beaten and he's the top heel. He said he couldn't help but feel so happy for Myers. And you're saying the exact same thing. I think that's really cool because it shows you've done your part just as well as the person who's won. And you've both told that story to the point where people felt like they could run to the ring and start stamping on the side of it. And, you know, that's just the beauty of wrestling. It's a story. And you told that story to perfection. So I think that's just the great thing about wrestling is how it makes you feel.
Absolutely.
There's so many people that say, "Oh, it's so fake," but it might be not real, but the feeling you get is very real, and that's why we all love it.
Yeah. I always say wrestling's always been my one constant. Whenever I've had rough times, I've been down or something's not going well, just putting wrestling on for an hour or two, you forget everything, and you get lost in that world. For me, it's the greatest thing on the face of the earth. And I'm totally with Callum on that. Absolutely, yeah. It's a special thing. It's a special thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I love hearing wrestlers tell stories about when, you know, like they get goosebumps too, and the moments that make them feel like a fan again. Because I'm sure even though you were part of that match and, you know, you've just lost the championship, I'm sure you still felt like a fan watching it, you know, like getting that feeling. That's why you watch it, and that's why you do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's anything better than when we're talking to people, hearing those kind of stories. But before we start wrapping things up, I just want to know, like, I always ask, where can we find merchandise? What shows have you got coming up soon? And is there anything you want to plug?
Okay, so merchandise-wise, I was very big on just like helping small businesses. So my cousin-in-law, I guess you could say, he owns his own t-shirt thing. So I always went to him to get shirts, and I actually have some that I have yet to pick up because I slack a lot. I was saying that as soon as I'm done selling all these shirts, I'm actually going to attempt, and now that I'm saying it here, I have to do it. I'm going to do a pro wrestling tee store finally. So sooner rather than later, there will be a pro wrestling tee store, hopefully with my name on it. But for right now, I don't really have that much merchandise. You could DM me on Twitter or on Instagram and ask, and I will gladly ship out a shirt once I get them. But that's mostly for merchandise wise right now. And then a show that I have coming up is Black Label Pro on August 22nd, and it's 11:30. I think is the start time, Central Time, here around in the Midwest, and it's on IWTV. And it's against Alex Shelley, like how we talked about. And then I think, is that pretty much it? I want to say that's pretty much as far as like shows go, as of now. I'm always under, like, just with the way that everything fluctuates, I'm always like, this is probably gonna be my last show of the year, and then I'm gonna, then next year when everything starts up again, everything will happen. But again, I'm just going along with everything. And then as far as plugging social media, both of them, Instagram and Twitter. I'm more active on Instagram than Twitter, but it's my long Twitter handle that's complicated.
I'll put it in the description.
Yeah. It's the Deja Vu.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah. It was just a cool name that somebody had told me, and I was like, you know what, it's different, and I'm gonna run with it, and nobody else has it, but everyone's like, hey man, you need to change your Twitter handle because I can never find you. And I actually, and I actually found somebody, like I found Isaias Velazquez at Isaias Velazquez, and they haven't been active on Twitter since I think 2014. So like I DM'd him. I'm like, hey, would it be cool? Like, I don't know, like if I could get this name or whatever, and no response. And then I even messaged Twitter and I was like, hey, this account hasn't been active. Like, what's going on? And then nothing happened. So I'm trying.
You this week. We're after getting the @Ringsiders Twitter handle because the account is 10 years old and it hasn't been used. There's no tweets, they're not following anyone, and they have no followers, no profile picture. So I was like, hey, Twitter, this account's never been used. Can we have @Ringsiders haven't heard anything back from them. And I'm just like, it's just going to waste and it's driving me crazy. I just want at Ringsiders. And like you're saying, you just want at your name because that would be easier to find. But I like it. Now you said it's deja vu. I'm like, of course it is. Like, because I was reading it and I was like, what does that say?
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody had told me that, and they were just like, hey, why don't you do this? And I said, that sounds really cool. I'm gonna go with it. So, and that, luckily it's so out of the ordinary and unique that anywhere I go to, whenever I create a username, it's always available. So I'm gonna keep going with it.
Yeah, you say that, but I'll bleep this bit out because there'll be people out there who will go and register that name now on social medias.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Just to spite you.
Yeah, they're like, I'm gonna grab it on everything now.
Yeah. But yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. And as I always say, when things are picking back up again, it'd be awesome to get you back on and actually see about what's going on as wrestling starts up again and talk about the shows you've got coming up. We always try and leave a little bit for a part 2. So like, it's nice to just find out about like what's currently going on, what you've been doing. Maybe next time we'll go into a bit more about how you got started in wrestling and being a fan when you were younger. So it's been absolutely great talking to you, and thank you for joining us. We've been Jamie and Callum as usual, and we're back next time.